Hi, boys and girls. Here we are back at the old movie theater again. I've been spending the last couple of hours this afternoon reading through your forum responses, and a couple of concerns have come up that I wanted to try to address with you. I started typing out a whole long lecture kind of a thing, and it got to be too complicated, and I thought it might be easier to just talk directly to you and clarify a couple of situations. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is the essay or the discussion prompts. A prompt is a thing that a teacher designs to give a student the opportunity to showcase their knowledge. It's prompting your knowledge, as in drawing it forth and so forth. So some of you were confused, and probably rightly so, about the prompt for the point of view discussion board. So I want to take you through that and explain to you the code that is built into those and how to unpack it. It's not as complicated as it seems. And one of the things a successful student does is you learn how to read that code. And, you know, instructors are taught how to do this in teacher school. We're not just pulling this out of the air. We know how to do it. And so your part of the job is to come along and unpack the code and ask if you don't understand, and my part of the job is to explain. So I have the thing here in my hand, but you might want to look at it on the screen if you can while you're viewing this video. And I'll take you through the code words that are in there. Okay? It says discuss two things. Discuss means talk about two things. One of them is easy and one is harder. So there's a pair of things there. The first one coming is going to be the easier one. The second one is the harder one. That's what it says. It doesn't require a lot of interpretation. Then you have two questions. Those are probably the two things that you're being asked to talk about. First, what is the point of view and what does that mean? So that's the easy one if you've read the textbook, and we'll talk about the textbook in a minute. If you've read the textbook, you know what point of view is, and you know that point of view works in certain ways that allow you to gain entry into a character's thoughts and motivations and so forth. So what is point of view and what does it mean? Well, okay, the answer would be the point of view in this story that I've chosen to look at is first person. And what that means is the person is expressing their ideas through dialogue, and I'm hearing that person talking. Then the second question, which is number 2 in the series, i.e. the harder question, or the more difficult question, how does that help you understand the story? How does it help you penetrate into the story? So the first question says, what do you know and what does it mean? Second question says, how do you use it? I admit to you that's not a terribly well written prompt, but it follows the directions. Here come two things you're supposed to talk about. Number 1 is easier, number 2 is harder. Number 1 is what is the point of view, which you can answer easily. Number 2 is how do you use that tool to understand the story, which invites you to speculate and share your own thoughts. And then I go on and explain a little more. So I'll try to do a little better, but for the folks who said you didn't understand what I was asking for, okay, I grant you it's not a great prompt, and I'll try to do better, but your part of the job is when you don't understand, you need to ask me and let me try to explain. Saying saying I don't understand, so I'm doing it this way is not going to be useful to you as a student. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. And I want to say to you, it's clear to me, you know, students are kind of falling into 3 categories. You know, there are the people who are trying and really don't understand, and then there are the people who aren't understanding the prompts, and that's okay. We can figure that out. But then there are people who clearly haven't read the textbook. I don't know what to say about that. I'm not going to lecture you about that. You're adults and you're college students. So I don't need to say anything about that. But it shows in your responses. And that brings me to talking about point of view. But I want to talk about something a little bit broader than that. The essay discussions are designed to lead you toward your essay, so that you're going to have to write in a month or so. So if I'm asking you to discuss point of view, bingo, that means I'm going to ask you to discuss point of view in your essay. So to decline to talk about point of view at all, and to make the same, to decline to talk about point of view in the same way in your essay means your essay is not going to do very well. So point of view is, and the textbook doesn't do a very good job, I have to admit. I'm sorry, I'm wandering a bit here. I'm going to try to find you some better stuff about point of view. But point of view is pretty much what it says. It's a precise literary term. And some of you seemed a little bit confused about what exactly point of view is. Point of view is who is telling the story and from what perspective they're telling it. It doesn't have to do with the subject of the story or the setting of the story or any of those other specific literary techniques or terminology. Point of view is who's the narrator and where is the narrator standing to tell the story. And why it's important to notice that is that helps us determine who the protagonist is and who the antagonist is, and so forth. So if you see pronouns, I feel this way, I think that way, that's first person point of view. That's I, me. Okay? If you're hearing Steve thought this way or Steve felt that way, that's not me, that's somebody talking about me, that's third person narration. And then you simply have to decide about reliability. After all, I can say I feel a certain way, and that has a kind of authenticity about it because I'm saying my feelings, but it's also limited by my perceptions, just as any other conversation would be. If somebody's talking to you about me, then you have to know what they know about me to determine whether their opinion of me is reliable or not. So that's where omniscience and limited omniscience comes in. An omniscient narrator knows everything about the character and is telling you how they feel. So an omniscient narrator usually is reliable. A narrator of limited omniscience is not usually reliable. As I said, I don't think the textbook does a great job, and I'll be sending you some stuff first of the week about this. But again, if I'm asking you to talk about any of a number of literary techniques, these are tools, devices that a writer uses to help a reader gain entry into the story, and the critical reader or the educated reader knows how to interpret those things. So again, going back to the discussion posts, every forum that asks you to discuss a technique or a device is my clue to you saying, look, you're going to have to talk about this device in your essay. So practice talking about it here so I can help you learn more about it and get precise in your understanding of it so that when you're talking about it in your essay, it's easy for you. You're not struggling to learn while you're writing the essay what should have maybe taken place a month previously. So again, let me just say one more time, the discussion forums are designed to lead you to your essay. I'm giving you hints about what's going to be on the test, if you want to look at it that way. So when I ask you to talk about point of view or setting or any of those things, you need to try to talk about those things and not talk about them because you don't understand them or you haven't read the textbook. Again, I don't grade your forum responses. I use them as prompts to ask questions to try to guide you into a more precise understanding. This is somewhat specialized terminology. And some of these words, like point of view, for instance, a literary critic uses those in certain ways. And our job is to learn how to use that language in that way. But if we don't ever talk about it, there's no possibility that we can shape our understanding or be more clear about it. Okay, so I was a little confused about some of your responses in the forum, which didn't seem to talk about what you were being asked to talk about, which in the forums it's no big deal, because then I'm going to try to help you talk about the stuff you're supposed to talk about. But if I get an essay that doesn't mention any of the literary techniques that we're learning about, I don't know what you'd expect. I don't know why you'd expect that essay to do well. It's like if you have an essay in math class and you give them well, you have a test in math class and you give them an essay on art history. It's not going to work. You know, yeah, it's a little bit esoteric. It's a little bit sophisticated. It's a little bit specialized, and it's not language that we use every day. But we're learning to analyze literature. That's a special kind of activity, which is why we call this class literature. The other thing I'll just add, well, because it's come into my mind, the worst thing you can do, and many of you sort of fell into this trap, is if you're asked excuse me, asked to write about something and you don't understand, just giving a plot summary is the worst dodge in the world. Don't make it obvious that you don't know what you're talking about by simply retelling the story. I've read the story probably 500 times. I know what the story's plot is. I don't want to hear that again. I want to know what you think about how the story works. That's a different thing entirely. So just try to focus a little. I'll try to make my prompts a little more clear. The other side of that is, if you don't understand, you've got to ask me. I can't read your minds, especially from 2,000 miles away. And when you're being asked to write about point of view, setting, character, theme, whatever it is, write about that thing, because that's what you're going to have to learn to reproduce in your essay. You can choose to write about anything you want, but an essay that doesn't address what we've been learning is not going to do very well. I hope that helps. I just really felt a lot of confusion in the force this afternoon, and wanted to do what I could to try to explain. If you're not reading the textbook, read the textbook. You know, get on board, or don't. It's up to you. You're adults, and I'm not your mother. But it won't go very well if you're not reading the textbook, obviously. And then try to apply the knowledge that you're learning. This is not the way. This is new knowledge. It's going to feel awkward applying it at first, but it will never go into your head if you don't attempt to apply it. I think that's enough. I hope this is helpful. I know I've been a little scattered this afternoon. I've been working all day and typing, staring at my computer screen all day, so my brain's a little fried. But go back and look at some of your forum posts, and you've got time to redo them and focus them a little more on what we're trying to do here. And if you don't understand, ask. For heaven's sake, ask. Don't go on writing about stuff you don't understand without making the effort to let me help you. And I'm going to send you some more stuff about point of view. The textbook is not real good on that. And I'll find some better stuff and send it to you. So when I send it to you, read it, okay? Hope you have a great weekend, and I will talk to you pretty soon. Bye-bye.